Welcome to Chicago. Not the Chicago of shiny postcards by Lake Michigan or skyscrapers reflecting the glittering sun. This is Chicago at 3:33 a.m., the hour of shadows, the hour of souls who cannot find sleep. In this city, people often say the wind doesn't just blow your head off. The wind here has teeth and claws. It winds through the narrow gaps between skyscrapers, hissing frosty sounds, scratching against the glass windows of high-rise apartments. And if you don't hold on tight, it will blow your dreams right out into the big lake. Tonight, the air is thick. Do you feel it? Gravity seems twice as heavy as during the day. It pulls your eyelids down. It pins your shoulders to the ground. Milo is standing under the elevated train tracks, right at the quietest intersection of the loop. Above his head, the massive, blackened steel track system runs across the night sky like the rib cage of a fossilized, prehistoric monster. Occasionally, a strong gust blows through, making the rusted steel beams bang together, emitting groaning sounds, creak, creak, sounding like the grinding teeth of a giant in pain. Milo doesn't dare sit. The metal bench at the bus stop, freezing cold, is inviting him. But he knows if he sits down now, the gravity of exhaustion will crush him. He fears he will dissolve into that seat, become part of this silent architecture, and never be able to stand up again. So he stands. He leans his back against a cold steel pillar, numb legs clinging to the cracked concrete sidewalk. Milo is an anchored man. He wears an ash-gray trench coat, collar turned up to hide a face gaunt from lack of sleep. His eyes are dark circled, reflecting the cold blue light from the phone screen in his hand. 3:33 a.m. Milo's thumb still swipes the screen in an unconscious reflex. Work emails still ding-ding into the inbox. Stock market numbers dance in red. News tickers run constantly, signaling a world that never stops spinning. He wants to turn it off. He wants to throw the phone into the sewer, but he can't. It is the anchor holding him to reality, even though that reality is draining his life force every second. He feels like a tiny ship stuck at anchor in a storm, the chain stretched to the breaking point, yet unable to drift away. This city is built on a perfect grid. Every street is perpendicular. Every building is vertical. Everything has rules, order, patterns. And Milo is trapped in that grid. He is trapped in the squares of Excel spreadsheets, in the squares of the office, and in the cramped square of an exorbitantly priced studio apartment. He craves a curve. He craves a deviation. Suddenly, the wind shifts. No longer the biting wind blowing in from Lake Michigan. A strange air current starts blowing up from underground, through steam vents, through cracks in the sidewalk. Old, soggy newspapers scattered on the street are suddenly lifted, spinning in mid-air like drunken dancers. Road dust curls up into small vortexes. Milo looks up. From the end of the road, where thick industrial fog is covering everything, two yellow beams of light pierce the darkness. It is coming. No roaring engine sound, no tire friction on the road, just the sound of cutting wind, whoosh, whoosh, low and smooth. A bus appears. It doesn't look like any bus in the Chicago public transit system. It looks like a machine stepped out of a 1950s dream. The body is large, softly rounded in Art Deco style, painted a deep indigo blue, glistening like the shell of a giant beetle. Brass trim lines run along the body, shining, reflecting the yellow streetlights. But the strangest thing is underneath. Milo squints. This bus has no wheels. Or rather, its four wheels have been folded sideways, pressed flat against the undercarriage. It is floating. That giant vehicle is gliding on an invisible magnetic cushion about 8 inches off the ground. It moves with a gentle sway, smooth as a boat drifting on a calm river, ignoring the roughness of the concrete road below. The bus glides past Milo a bit, then slowly backs up, drifting gently until the front door stops right in front of him. On the LED display board at the front, there is no street name, no route number, just words scrolling slowly, emitting a gentle, milky white light. Route 00, Cloud Commute. The bus door shutters once, then opens. Hiss. Sss. The sound of compressed air escaping sounds smooth, like opening a can of soda. A rush of cool, pure air flows out from inside the bus, hitting Milo's face. It doesn't smell of machine oil, doesn't smell of crowded sweat or old plastic seats. It carries the smell of ozone, the distinct smell of air before a thunderstorm, the smell of peppermint, the smell of high atmospheric layers where dust cannot reach. Milo stands rooted, looking into the inviting space inside. He knows if he steps up there, he will leave this safe but suffocating grid behind. The phone in his hand vibrates again. A new email, a new request, a new command from the world of gravity. Milo looks at the phone, then looks at the wide-open bus door. He shoves the phone into the deepest pocket of his coat. He takes a deep breath of that scent of freedom. And he lifts his foot, stepping across the space separating the ground and the hovering bus floor. The moment Milo's heel leaves the cracked concrete sidewalk and touches the first step of the bus, he feels a strange physical change. The floor isn't hard and cold like normal metal. It is elastic. It pushes gently against his soul, soft and bouncy as if he just stepped onto a trampoline or a thick rubber cushion filled with compressed air. The bus door closes behind him with a smooth whoosh, airtight, cutting off the howling wind and grinding train noise outside completely. The space inside the bus is absolutely quiet, but not a dead silence. It is the silence of an isolation airlock. The air here is thinner, lighter, and filled with a warm orange-yellow light emanating from tiny filament bulbs mounted along the leather-lined ceiling. Milo steadies himself, breathing to adjust to the new pressure. He reaches into his coat pocket, out of habit of a diligent urban resident, pulling out his leather wallet. His fingers search for the hard plastic Ventra card. He is too used to this process. Step on the bus, tap the card, hear the emotionless beep, and find a cramped seat. But as he intends to hold the card toward the fare box, a hand wearing a dark brown leather glove suddenly reaches out, stopping his action. Milo looks up. Sitting behind the large, polished mahogany steering wheel is the pilot. But it isn't a tired, middle-aged man in the usual light blue uniform. It is a young man, facial features sharp and calm. He wears an old-style, soft leather aviator cap, hugging his head, and a pair of large goggles with amber lenses pushed up on his forehead. The pilot says nothing. He just shakes his head slightly, then uses a leather-clad index finger to point to the side. Milo looks where he points. No card reader. No clear plastic coin box. Instead, attached firmly to the bus wall is a strange machine made of polished brass. It looks like a giant funnel, mouth flaring wide upwards, narrowing in the middle, and connected to a system of intricate air ducts running down to the floor. These pipes vibrate slightly, emitting a low hum, like the sucking sound of a tornado trapped in a bottle. Next to the funnel is a metal plate engraved with raised letters, sharp Art Deco font. Deposit heavy thoughts only. Milo freezes. He looks at the sign, then at the pilot. The young man nods slightly, his gaze steady, looking straight at Milo's left chest, where his heart is beating tired rhythms. Milo understands. This isn't a metaphor. This is a real transaction. He swallows hard.
The heavy feeling in his chest suddenly becomes clearer than ever. It is no longer an abstract feeling. It solidifies. He feels like a boulder, cold, rough, and sharp-edged, is lying on his lungs, pressing on his heart. It is the anxiety about unfinished projects. It is the loneliness of sleepless nights. It is the weight of expectations he cannot meet. Milo tremblingly raises his right hand. He doesn't reach into his pocket. He presses his fingers through the coat layer, through his chest, as if his flesh is just mist. He grabs that boulder. His hand feels its terrible weight. It is freezing cold, sucking all heat from his hand. He grinds his teeth, using all his strength to pull it out. Scritch. A strange friction sensation runs along his body, as if he is pulling a giant thorn out of his soul, both painful and liberating. Milo pulls his hand out. In his palm, there is nothing. The naked eye sees nothing. But his bicep tenses, veins popping, proving he is lifting an object weighing dozens of pounds. He steps to the brass funnel. He opens his hand, drops it down. Thud. A loud noise rings out, shaking the floor. That isn't the sound of air. That is the sound of a solid, extremely heavy object hitting a metal bottom. The sound is resonant, steel-hard and ruthless. Immediately after is the whoosh, whoosh sound of the air duct system swallowing that boulder, crushing it, and converting it into fuel. And the moment that thud rang out, an immediate physical change hits Milo. Gravity disappears, or at least it reduced by 90%. Milo's knees, which were sagging from fatigue, suddenly bounce up. His heels leave the floor. His entire body becomes light as a feather, or like an astronaut just stepping into zero gravity. He panics, flailing, hurriedly reaching out to grab the brass handrail nearby to keep himself from floating up to the ceiling. The heavy trench coat on him is now billowy, as if made of clowns. The pressure on his shoulders vanishes. The stiffness in his neck melts away. Milo takes a deep breath. His chest expands fully, no longer compressed by that invisible boulder.
Air rushes into his lungs, sweet and cool. The pilot looks at him. Mouth corner quirks up in a satisfied half smile. He pulls the gear lever, a giant lever looking like an airplane throttle. Clunk. "Secure your seats," a smooth mechanical voice rings from the speakers, but sounds like the whisper of the wind. "We are preparing for departure." Milo, still clinging to the handrail, pushes lightly off the floor with his toe. Just a tiny force is enough to send his body gliding through the air. He swims, literally, through the aisle between the two rows of seats, heading toward an empty seat upholstered in deep blue velvet near the window. Around him, other passengers are in a similar state. A woman in silk pajamas is floating a few inches off the seat, holding a book, but eyes closed, drifting in peaceful sleep. A man wrapped in a wool blanket is leaning his forehead against the window, watching the city, legs pulled up, floating like a child in the womb. Milo grabs the seat edge, pulls himself down, and buckles the seatbelt, a 5-point harness sturdy as a pilot's seat. He has been liberated from the weight of the earth, and now the real journey begins. Click! The metal latch of the seatbelt clicks, locking Milo into the blue velvet seat. Even though his body is still light as a balloon, the belt keeps him feeling the safety of an anchor point. The bus shudders. Not the shudder of an old internal combustion engine, but the accumulation of energy of a jet machine. It starts to glide. Outside the window, Michigan Avenue, Chicago's magnificent mile, drifts by like a slow-motion film. Luxury fashion stores, splendid hotels, are now just silent shadows. Sodium yellow streetlights glide across the glass in continuous, long streaks, creating a hypnotic ribbon of light. Speed increases. Milo feels inertia pressing his back lightly into the seat. The bus glides smoothly on the magnetic cushion. No bumps, no friction noise. It is like a deep blue shark swimming in a river of concrete. Suddenly, in front, a giant wall rises. It is the Chicago River Bridge. At this hour, the two steel and concrete leaves of the bridge have been split and raised vertically to an 80-degree angle for barges to pass underneath. The two bridge faces stand tall, piercing the sky like two giant tombstones blocking the way. Red warning lights on top of the bridge flash continuously in the night mist. Reflexively as a driver, Milo's right foot stomps hard on the floor, searching for a brake pedal unconsciously. "Stop! We're gonna crash!" he wants to scream. But the pilot doesn't slow down. On the contrary, the young man pushes the gear lever hard forward. On the dashboard, covered in classic pressure gauges, a green light turns on next to the text, "Wind shear mode." Vroom! A new sound tears through the space. From the rear, two hidden jet exhausts pop open, blasting out two extremely powerful streams of blue compressed air. The bus roars, shooting forward like an arrow released from a bow. It doesn't crash into the bridge base. It rushes up the slope of the vertical bridge leaf. Milo screams, but the scream is swallowed by G-force. The bus clings to the steep bridge face, running straight up to the sky like a roller coaster. And right at the peak of the bridge, where concrete ends and only pitch-black sky remains, it launches. Whoosh. In that moment, Milo's stomach lurches, hanging somewhere near his throat. The bus separates from the ground. It flies. The four wheels fold completely into the body. Flaps on both sides extend to stabilize balance. The bulky bus suddenly becomes graceful as a giant metal falcon. It arcs a soft curve, soaring high, passing the towers of the Wrigley Building, gliding right in front of the stone gargoyles on the Tribune Tower. Milo sees the soulless stone eyes of the statue glide past the window by mere inches. They are going high, higher. The jet engine sound softens, turning into the smooth hum of cruise mode. Milo presses his face to the glass. He looks down, and the scene below makes him hold his breath. Chicago appears below, brilliant and cold. From this height, Milo clearly sees the grid. The city is a giant chessboard drawn by straight, perpendicular roads, intersecting precisely to the degree. Squares of buildings, squares of parks, squares of streetlights. It is a matrix of order, a prison of geometric perfection. That is where Milo lived, worked, obeyed every rule. He followed those straight lines, didn't dare turn sideways, didn't dare deviate. He was an obedient pawn on that board. But now he is above it. Route Zero bus doesn't run in a straight line. It is flying in a spiral. It loops around the Willis Tower. It winds through low clouds. It draws soft and free curves on the night sky, completely breaking the rigid structure of the grid below. A feeling of gloating, a silent rebellion explodes in Milo's chest. He is looking down at his cage from the position of a fugitive. Deadlines, pressures, numbers. From this height, they are just tiny, harmless, distant specks of light. "Goodbye, straight lines," Milo whispers, breath fogging a corner of a glass. The bus continues to climb, nose pointing straight at the thick cloud layers obscuring the moon. The city lights below fade, giving way to the immense darkness of the stratosphere. They are preparing to leave the human world. The bus nose pierces the night, plunging straight into the dense cumulus clouds hovering above the city. The world outside the window vanishes. No more streetlights, no more skyscrapers. Only a churning, murky white remains. Scratch, crack, crack. The temperature outside drops below zero. On the window glass, frost flowers begin to bloom. Fishbone-shaped ice crystals spread fast from the edges to the center, painting beautiful fractal patterns, obscuring Milo's view. Inside the bus, the warm orange-yellow lights seem to huddle together, forming a small, safe cocoon amidst the endless cold sea. Suddenly, boom! Not an explosion. It is the sound of pressure release as the bus pierces through the fog layer and emerges on top of the atmosphere. Milo opens his eyes wide. The ice flowers on the glass melt instantly under the brilliant light. They are above the clouds. Below the undercarriage is a silver-white sea of clouds stretching to the horizon, fluffy and soft as a giant ocean of cotton. Above is the deep black velvet sky, crystal clear, not a speck of dust. And the moon, huge, perfectly round, shining brightly like a silver eye, is hanging right in front of the nose.
so close, Milo feels he could reach out and touch its cratered surface. The rear jet engines cut off. The bus doesn't fall, it drifts. It glides in the absolute silence of the stratosphere. Only the sound of wind whistling softly, whoosh, whoosh, through the door cracks remains. The vehicle slows, then stops hovering next to a giant cumulus cloud shaped like a steam castle. Planted on that cloud is a familiar traffic sign, but the pole is made of light, and the text on the sign reads, "Bus stop, the pause." No one gets on, no one gets off. This isn't a stop to pick up or drop off passengers. This is a stop to breathe. A soft ding sounds. The fasten seatbelt sign turns off. From the cockpit, a woman steps out. She isn't the pilot. She wears a classic 60s flight attendant uniform, pale sky blue, with a garrison cap tilted charmingly. But her steps don't touch the floor. She glides, heels hovering about 2 inches off the velvet carpet. She doesn't push a food or drink cart. In her hand is a silver tray holding exquisite crystal perfume bottles with netted atomizer bulbs. She walks down the aisle, stopping at each seat. The other passengers seem familiar with this ritual. They close their eyes, tilting their faces up in anticipation. She reaches Milo's seat. Milo looks at her, confused. "What scent would you like tonight, sir?" she asks, voice echoing like glass wind chimes. "We have Oblivion and Reverie." "What's the difference?" Milo whispers. "Oblivion is a sleep of nothingness, empty, pitch black, to wipe away fatigue," she explains, pointing to the deep purple bottle. "And Reverie, it will take you to the place you want to go most, but cannot reach on foot." Milo thinks of the cramped apartment, thinks of the numbers. He doesn't want emptiness. He has been empty for too long. He needs a little color. "Give me Reverie," he says. The attendant smiles. She picks up the pale yellow crystal bottle. She points the nozzle at Milo's face and gently squeezes the rubber bulb. Psst, psst. A fine, cool mist covers Milo's face. He inhales. The scent invades his smell instantly. It is unlike any perfume on Earth. It has the smell of ozone, the clear smell after a rainstorm, the smell of warm vanilla, the smell of crushed fresh mint leaves, and, strangely, even the smell of old book pages sunning. That scent goes straight to the brain, softening every tense nerve. "Sleep well, sir," the attendant whispers, then glides toward the back of the bus. Sleepiness hits Milo not like a punch, but like a soft embrace. His eyelids grow heavy, but not the heavy kind like on the ground. It is absolute relaxation. Milo reaches for the seatbelt buckle. Click, the belt releases. And immediately, magic happens. No longer held by the strap, Milo's body slowly floats up. Gravity in the bus has reduced to zero. Milo leaves the velvet seat surface. He hovers in midair, arms hanging loose, legs straight. He rotates gently, slowly, like a leaf falling in a still lake. No more pressure on the spine, no more weight on the shoulders, no rigid support point digging into the hips. His body is completely free. Around him, other passengers are also floating in their own sleep. They are like schools of fish hibernating in a giant tank of light. Milo closes his eyes. In his drowsy state, he sees himself no longer as Milo, the diligent office worker. He sees himself turn into a paper a kite with a broken string. But instead of fearfully crashing to the ground, he feels joy. The string anchoring him to the ground, to responsibility, to the chessboard squares, has been cut. He rides the wind, flying high, higher forever, dancing with silver clouds under the moonlight. For the first time in years, at an altitude of 30,000 feet, Milo finds a complete sleep. Ding! A gentle bell chimes, clear as a water drop hitting a still lake, pulling Milo out of zero-gravity sleep. He opens his eyes. The deep black sky outside the window is gone, replaced by a strip of dark purple mixed with deep pink spreading on the eastern horizon. Dawn is coming. The stars are starting to fade into the sky, brightening by the minute. Milo feels a gentle pull. Artificial gravity is being reestablished. His body slowly lowers. His back touches the soft velvet of the seat. His hips find the support point again. His legs, previously floating, now rest lightly on the floor. He buckles the seatbelt again. Click. A feeling of regret creeps in, but accompanied by the refreshment of a fully charged brain. On the front dashboard, the pilot shifts the lever to the center position. The pause sign turns off. The re-entry sign lights up amber yellow. The bus leaves the stop cloud. It glides into empty space.
And then, the pilot does something crazy. He kills the engine. The smooth hum of the jet system dies out. Absolute silence covers in an instant. And then, the fall. The giant, heavy bus begins to plummet vertically. Earth's gravity grabs it, yanking it toward the ground with free-fall acceleration. Whoosh! Milo's stomach lurches, hanging somewhere near his throat. The feeling of the drop hits, strong and rough, like the drop of a roller coaster plunging down the highest slope. Wind howls outside the window, tearing apart the earlier peace. The city of Chicago below is rushing up to meet them. Skyscrapers from tiny dots of light suddenly swell into giant, sharp concrete pillars. The grid is opening wide like the mouth of a monster. Milo grips the armrests tight. His heart pounds in his chest. Thump, 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 thump. But strangely, he doesn't feel fear. In that crazy free-fall moment, he feels alive. Blood pumps rushing in his veins. His lungs expand. Survival instinct rises, waking every sleeping sense. He is no longer a sleep-deprived ghost. He is more awake than ever. When the ground is only about 50 meters from the undercarriage, the pilot calmly pushes the lever up. Boom! The magnetic cushion system roars, reactivating at the last second. A giant blast of compressed air shoots down to the road surface, creating an invisible air pillow catching the bus. The fall stops abruptly, but incredibly smoothly. The bus bounces slightly, hovering 4 inches off the asphalt, then drifts on smoothly as if nothing happened. They have returned to the ground. Back to Chicago at 5 a.m. Streets are deserted, soaked in early dew. Streetlights are off. The gray, cold, practical light of the city starts to cover the scenery. The bus glides through familiar streets, under the train bridge, and stops right at the shabby bus stop under the tracks where Milo got on. The door opens. Milo unbuckles. He stands up. His legs feel the weight of gravity. It is heavy. It pulls him down. But this time, he doesn't feel tired. He feels grounding. He feels he has the weight to stand firm on this ground. He walks toward the front door to exit. Passing the driver's seat, the young pilot raises a finger, signaling him to stop. He says nothing. He points to the brass funnel where Milo threw his anxiety boulder earlier. Below the funnel is a small tray, like the change tray of a vending machine. Clink. Something just dropped into the tray. The pilot nods, gesturing for Milo to take it. Milo reaches into the tray. His fingers touch a small, round, freezing cold and smooth object. He picks it up, holding it to the dim light of the dashboard. It is a marble. But it isn't made of ordinary glass. It is clear as crystal. And right in the center of the marble, there is a tiny wisp of white cloud, twisting like a tiny storm, frozen eternally. Milo looks up at the pilot, eyes full of questions. The pilot smirks, a rare smile. He taps his finger lightly on his own left chest, then points to the marble in Milo's hand. Milo understands. That is the rough, rugged, heavy boulder he threw into the funnel. The machine didn't destroy it. Sadness and pressure cannot just disappear. The machine crushed it, compressed it under the extreme pressure of the clouds, polished the sharp edges, and transformed it into something small, smooth, and beautiful. It is still his burden, but now he can hold it neatly in his palm. He can look at it. He can control it. Milo grips the marble tight. Its cold sensation transmits into his skin, like a reminder of the 30,000 feet altitude he just experienced. He nods to the pilot, a nod between two men who understand. Milo steps down the bus steps. His shoe hits the cracked concrete sidewalk. The bus door closes behind him. The Route Zero bus shudders. The indigo shell begins to fade, blending into the thick mist of early morning, then vanishes completely into the void, like a mirage. Only Milo remains standing there, alone under the train tracks. Milo stands rooted on the sidewalk, staring at the empty space where the bus just vanished. No more sparkling indigo shell. No more smooth wind-parting sound. Reality rushes in, rough and loud. Screech! Screech! Rumble! Right above his head, a brown line train rushes past the curve of the elevated track. Steel wheels grinding on rusted rails create ear-piercing sounds, shooting blue sparks falling like rain down to the street below. Chicago has awakened. Garbage trucks growl at the alley entrance. Delivery trucks honk. The smell of burnt, roasted coffee from the Dunkin' Donuts across the street starts to seep into the air, mixing with the smell of cold metal and urban waste. The chessboard grid has returned, tightening around the city. Gravity weighs heavy on Milo's shoulders again. He feels the weight of the coat, the weight of the shoes, and the weight of a long workday waiting ahead. The phone in his pocket vibrates again. Bzzzt. An email reminding of the 9 a.m. meeting. Out of old habit,
Milo's stomach lurches. A wave of anxiety threatens to rise. But this time, his hand doesn't reach for the phone. His hand thrusts deep into his right coat pocket. His cold fingers touch a smooth, round surface. The marble. He rolls it gently between his thumb and index finger. The cool sensation from the marble transmits into his skin, running up his arm to his brain. It is like an ice cube applied to a swollen wound. Milo remembers the feeling of floating in the stratosphere, remembers the scent of ozone and peppermint, remembers the moment he was a kite with a broken string but didn't fall. He realizes the anxiety boulder weighing on his chest didn't disappear. It is still there in his pocket, but it has changed shape. It has been compressed, polished into something small he can control. It no longer crushes him. He is holding it. Milo looks up. Steel and glass skyscrapers stand tall around him, blocking the dawn sky. Before, he saw them as prison bars confining him in their shadow. But this morning, as he rubs his thumb over the cloud-filled marble, his perspective has changed.
He sees those sharp spires not to pierce the sky. They are bridges. They are launch pads. They are the desperate and proud effort of humans, creatures bound by gravity, to reach out and touch the clouds. Milo smiles, a relieved, private smile. He cannot live forever on that bus. He belongs to this ground. But now, he knows that above the office ceiling, above those noisy train tracks, there is always a pause floating, waiting for him. He pulls his hand out of his pocket, leaving the marble resting there as a private secret. Milo adjusts his collar, steps out of the shadow of the bridge, merging into the stream of people rushing toward the train station. His footsteps pound on the solid concrete road, but inside him, a part is still flying. And Milo starts his new day, not as a sleepwalker, but as someone who knows the secret of the sky. My dear friends, gravity is the immutable law of Earth. We cannot fly forever. We have to go to work, pay bills, face car horns and deadlines. But soaring is the inviolable right of your soul. Don't let the weight of this world crush you into dust. Let it compress you into a gem, hard and clear. This morning, when you step out of the house, try checking your coat pocket, or simply close your eyes for a second. Maybe you will find a cool cloud marble, a souvenir from last night's trip. Keep it safe, and whenever you feel suffocated, remember, Route Zero is always running somewhere above the clouds, and the only ticket you need to pay is the willingness to let go of the burden in your heart. Good morning, Chicago. Good morning, dreamers. Wishing you a day that is truly weightless.